behind me is the Great Trilithon of Tonga, also called the Burden of Maui, who actually supposedly brought the Great Lintel from Willis Island in French Polynesia all the way here on his back, as the legend states. There's also, in the book 1421, it said that the Chinese may have come here and actually built this Trilithon here as part of perhaps a great survey they were doing around different parts of the world. It also has astronomical alignments linking with the longest day, the summer solstice. So just looking at the detail on the Great Trilithon here at Tonga, you can see the way the lintel goes in above through the main rocks on either side. It's been very wet here today, so it's dripping a lot, and you get the same thing over on this side. It kind of just fitted in perfectly. So legend states that it was built around 1200 AD by Tui Itatui, who was the 11th Tui Tonga, or the great god king of Tonga. However, there's evidence that there was much earlier culture here, not just in Tonga, but throughout the Pacific. And Tonga was the main capital of the navigational kind of culture that existed here. So this is just one amazing example of one of the monuments they placed here that spread throughout the entire Pacific. And it's known that there's sites like this, not exactly like this, but similar to this on Fiji, on in different parts of French Polynesia, and even way up into Micronesia with sites like Nam Madol. So there was definitely some advanced megalithic navigational culture here, and this is one of the prime examples of what they left here for us to enjoy today. In May 1967, the late King Tafu Ahawa Tupo proposed a new explanation of this whole site, suggesting that the notch carved in the top lintel, which we can't actually get up to today, actually was significant, that it was like a lunar calendar, and it was established to provide evidence of the starting of the year. There was also some other tests done which suggest it's aligned to the summer and winter solstices, so it could have been an astronomical kind of marker, similar to what we have at Stonehenge, where it was measuring different times of the year. Okay, so we're just trying to get to the other stone here. Oh crikey, and it's very muddy. There's no way round, I don't think. I'm going to try going over this way maybe. This might be a little less muddy. You just see it here, look. So we're trying to get through that. So this is the great stone of Maka'akapananga, if that's pronounced correctly, here on the very eastern shore of Tonga. So we just made our way through some serious mud and swamp, and this is the Leaning Rock, which is very close, maybe 120 meters away from the main Trilithon here on Tonga. And it's supposed to resemble a large head and shoulders and back, and this is where it's said that the 11th king would sit against it, and he would keep people at bay who maybe were trying to assassinate him or harm him by hitting their knees. And this, what some people say, may of where the Quizo position came from, the kneeling position, which we find in lots of tiki statues all around this part of the Pacific, also way up to Easter Island, and even over into South America and other parts of the world. And it just, to me, it's just like many of the sites we even see in England or in Europe. And I do wonder if this Trilithon was based on Stonehenge, or even the other way round, because you don't find these Trilithons really anywhere apart from maybe North Africa. You get some examples in Peru, but not quite the same. And it just seemed like it is the kind of Polynesian version of Stonehenge. behind me is one of the larger Langis here on the eastern area of Tonga. And you can just see how large these stones are that make up, especially this cornerstone here. And there's even the stones actually get curved and go out into a flat horizontal surface, a bit like what we see in Egypt, even at the pyramids there. And these do kind of resemble like the bases of pyramids, but they're said to be the resting places of the ancient kings and possibly the earlier culture who were here, going back 1500 BC, but they're still used today, which is sort of fascinating continuation of this tradition. But this is a much larger megalithic construction. You can see these huge stones. This must be like 20 or maybe 30 tons, just making up one cornerstone of this particular Langi, with the smaller ones down at the bottom here. And there's 3 levels, and there's modern, relatively modern graves still being used on top. They're semi-polygonal, they kind of fitted together in an unusual, very beautiful way. Not quite the precision obviously we see in Peru, but you can see here they're pretty finely cut, going right down the centre there. The ones down here look a bit more rough. So we're just round on the other corner here, and you can again see these huge megalithic blocks making up this Langi, this pyramidical platform, going all the way down there to some steps which you're not allowed to go on anymore, because that's just used for the people who are actually still using the site. I'm just looking for the notched stone, which I read was here in David Childress's book. I'm hoping it's this Langi particularly. You can just see this beautiful look. Walking through more mud, I just want to get around. You can see like this L shape. These are like massive L-shaped blocks lying horizontally in the ground. I believe around here somewhere. Through yet more swamp. I'm going to get my feet wet again. Very wet, but at least it's nice and cool. Hoping to find the notched block. Apparently there's a big notch in one of these stones. I'm not sure exactly where that would be. It does look rather wet down here, so I'm not sure if I'm going to be able to make it along here. But this just shows you the back side of this particular Langi. And this is the massive L-shaped block at the base corner of it. And these do look particularly ancient. So just around the back here. Again, just from the other side, I was trying to find this notching in this stone. Can't seem to find it. It's really hard to see anything. It looks like there's some sort of kind of bits dug out of this part of the rock, but it is coral, so you do get that kind of thing naturally. So you can just see behind me the incredible size of some of the stones that make up this Langi here in Tonga. It's huge. I'm just really impressed by this. This is like a pyramid platform. No one's 100% sure exactly what they were used for, but today they thought that they were used as some kind of burial platforms, where they would actually bury the dead actually underneath some of these. Some actually have been excavated and they have found evidence of that, but that's relatively modern, so who knows what the ancient purpose could have been. They could have had structures on top of them. They could have had other ceremonial purposes. They could have been great markers on a survey of the planet, who knows. But what I'm seeing here is quite rough hewn stone. It's quite neatly put together. It's not the same quality as Peru or anything like that, you know, or Egypt. It's nothing like that. But it's very obviously the same people who constructed the Trilithon made these as well. So it's another great mystery here in Polynesia. I'm not sure if you can see how big this stone is behind me, but this is on this is the back corner of one of the Langi, the largest one we've seen here in Tonga, and it's huge. There's a stone here that must be 20 or 25 feet long and about 5 or 6 feet high and probably 3 or 4 to 5 feet deep. So we're looking at something that must be in excess of 30 to 50 tons. This is just one of the stones on the corner here, and this would have been quarried probably from near the beach area, probably a couple of miles from here, and brought all the way here. And it just shows you the ingenuity, the megalithic expertise that we have here in Tonga, which is quite unique considering where we are in the world, in the middle of the Pacific Ocean, you know, as far south as you can get pretty much. it's a very impressive site. This is just one example of 28 of these Langi temple platforms that have been discovered. Many are now overgrown, many have been destroyed, many of the rocks have been reused to build other things, but these are some prime examples here and well worth a visit if you make it to Tonga. This is just part of the moat system, or the canals that existed here near the Langi platforms of Tonga. So we're just on the road heading out from the Lapida, and here is actually part of the great moat that went around this part of the island. Now it's just full of rubbish now, and there's a little pig running out of it, and this is just one part of it which the road has actually been built over, and it goes over that side of the road as well. So this just shows you one example of it. This is a supposed landing spot of Captain Cook when he first discovered Tonga. So there's like a Langi just over there behind that church. There's another one here behind this graveyard. You can see some of the stones in the background just falling down there. So we've just come back to one of the Langi sites here in Tonga. This one's just by the side of the road, just near Mua, just near the ancient royal capital of Tonga. And they go along right down the side of both sides of the main road here. This one's actually behind a graveyard, so I've got to be careful. I want to sort of be quite respectful as I go around here, but you can kind of just see behind me some of the huge megaliths I'm kind of dealing with. So you can see all the way through here that even with this modern graveyard here in Tonga, you can see all these bright coloured kind of grave goods. It's built upon this massive megalithic Langi. That's a bit sunnier today than it was when we were exploring yesterday, but you can just see these huge megalithic slabs that have obviously come from the coral reef, but you can just, some of these are just magnificent. This is the third one we've really seen. That's got very large megaliths. You can see one that's just sort of fallen down there. You see this beautiful tree, and this one here going across. Another one fallen back here. This one seems to have been built higher up than the other two we saw that were kind of much more, much lower down really. Which shows you the fine example of this beautiful stonework here. Now these aren't like the megalithic massive blocks we saw where they're kind of like several feet deep thick. These are actually kind of a bit thinner, more like slabs. You can kind of see that the way they've fallen over here. Fascinating. So this looks like it could be the small notch in the stone that we've just spotted here. Difficult to get up, there's a lot of bush and jungle in the way. I don't know if you can see that there. It's the kind of notch in the stone, looks like almost polygonal. I just wanted to get that on camera just to show you close up, the closest we can get. Another Langi we just found. This is along the side of the road, but this one looks like it's been reconstructed recently, and it does look like sort of modern, but I get a feeling the stones in it are ancient, and they've probably cleared it. You can see where they've cleared all the trees, and they're actually preparing to use it again. So it's a brilliant example of the way they're continuing these ancient burial traditions here on Tonga. really does make you feel like you're at an ancient building site when they were first building these Langi. It's almost like going back in time, and they're building it right now. So there's a couple of stones here just behind me that look surprisingly big, and I think these are the ones that actually have the notch on it, like the polygonal shape on it, a bit like you see it on parts of the Trilithon and also what you see in other parts of the world. So it looks a little bit swampy down there. There's a lot of bugs around here right now. It's a very hot day, so let's go down there and see what we can find. So just behind me here, this is actually the bit we've been looking for. This is the bit that's documented in David Childress's book about ancient Tonga. And you actually see this notch here and the way it kind of joins together with the other stone, which is a classic example of what we find at many megalithic sites around the world. We see this kind of thing in Malta, we see this obviously at the Trilithon, also in Tonga, and we see kind of things like this even in England, even at Stonehenge, the way the mortise and tenon joints come together, and in different places around the world. I mean, obviously this isn't the kind of detail and precision you're going to see in Peru or Egypt, but definitely noticeable here. Now these stones are huge. These two behind me are probably 30 tons each. They're not that thick, they're like slabs. They're not like megaliths, they're not solid all the way through. They're kind of quite thin, but it just shows you another amazing example of the megalithic technology here we find on Tonga. I'm very glad we made the effort, and we basically have to walk right around the back and go along parallel to the road. And this is the huge stone with a big hole in it there as well, and another hole, and then it continues the smaller stones over there, as though this was one of the major entrances to this particular Langi site.